All right, guys, this is going to be a super quick set, and you guys will have a follow-up assignment on this. All right, so evidence for evolution comes from fossils. So fossils provide evidence because the rocks can be dated through relative dating techniques, and they can show patterns of development. The law of superposition, this is the law that pretty much states that the older rocks are going to be at the bottom because they would have been deposited first, and the youngest rocks would be at the top because they would have been deposited last. So you can look at these fossils and you could see how an organism has changed over time, which provides evidence for evolution. Vestigial structures also provide evidence. These are structures that are present in an organism, but they're reduced in size or they don't have a function anymore. The appendix should come to mind, or tailbone in humans. Right? So these are structures that are there that are believed to have had more of a function in earlier versions of the organism. We can get evidence from looking at the homologous structures, right? These are structures that share a common ancestry but different functions. So sometimes when you look at the structure of certain things, you see that they're kind of lined up the same way, right? If you look, you see that in these, this is a human, this is a cat, there's a bat. You can see that they all have this structure here that I'm pointing to. You see that they all have the radius and ulna that follows next, and then you see that they all have the phalanges that are next. So they're very similar, even though they do very different things. And this provides evidence of divergent evolution. So this kind of gets us to understand that, oh, maybe these things evolved from the same common ancestor, but because they're in different habitats and they're doing different things, these structures evolved to do different things. All right. Again, by looking at the structures, you can also find evidence in analogous structures. So this is when unrelated animals have organs with similar functions that are very different in structure. So they do the same thing, but the structure of it is very different, right? Which is kind of the opposite of homologous. So if you look at the butterfly wing and the bat wing, you see that the bat wing has bones, but the butterfly wing does not, but they're both used to fly, right? Right. All right. We can also get molecular evidence for evolution. So if a species, I want this thing to go away. If a species changes over time, that means that their DNA changes as well, right? And so a common ancestor is just a species from which two or more species have diverged. So scientists look at the DNA, the proteins, the amino acids, and the more similar the DNA or the protein or the amino acid, the more recently they shared a common ancestor. So the more similarities, the more you have in common, the better. Sometimes they also look at it in terms of number of differences. And in that case, the thought would be the reverse. The less differences you have, the more closely related you are. Okay? So we're going to do those in class. You can use the number of differences or number of similarities to create what's called a cladogram, right? And it's kind of just a family tree showing relatedness. So here's a cladogram, and we're going to talk about this more when we dive into ecology. But just looking at this, the most recent, the not the most recent, the common ancestor would be whatever organism is here. you could tell that humans are least related to lamprey and they're most related to apes. Right? We can also get evidence by looking at the embryos. Embryos of vertebrates are very similar in appearance in their early development, but they grow into different structures in the adult form, and this suggests common ancestry. This suggests that maybe we are more alike than different from other species, right? So similarities in early development show that similar genes are at work. And our thought is these similar genes must have come from a common ancestor. All right, guys, that is it. I told you it was going to be short.